most people can believe that Jesus is coming back again, but the real controversy comes in of the timing of it. When does this event take place? Well, we may be getting ahead of ourselves here to bring this out, but we'll talk about this perhaps later on. But there is a time frame. It starts with Daniel 9:27. It's also found in the book of Revelation, which is a time frame called the 7-year tribulation period. Now, in Daniel 9:27, it says he confirms the covenant with many for 1 week. That word week there in Hebrew is a Hebrew word for week of years and not week of days. That's why we talk about 7 years. And then you read later on in the book of Daniel, it talks about the Antichrist, and it says he will rule for time, times, and dividing of time. That is a theological term again in Hebrew, meaning 3.5 years. Time is 1 year. Times is double, 2 years. Half a time is 6 months. That's where we get 3.5 years from. Then we go to the book of Revelation, and we see the 7-year tribulation there because of the way the book of Revelation is divided up. Book of Revelation there is divided up into 1,260 days, or 42 months for the first half. Then there's a little bit of a break with some activity taking place right in the middle where the Antichrist invades Jerusalem, and then he rules for another 42 months or 1,260 days. And you can clearly see that when you look at the book of Revelation, how that it's divided up into 42 months and 42 months. Now, having said that, that means that there is a 7-year time frame where I call it the 7 years in which man's government has the authority and power to rule before the Messiah comes back. This is called a prophetic week, one prophetic week. Now, let's follow through with this and let's look at something. Most people believe that there is, and I say most people, let me say it this way to make it clarified. Most people who believe in biblical prophecy, who study the Scriptures, believe there's going to be a 7-year tribulation period. Matthew 24, part of it is called the Great Tribulation. In the book of Revelation, John says, these are they which have come out of tribulation, have washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb. So this theory about tribulation is found not only in the New Testament, it is found in the Old Testament passages. It is also found in the writings of the early church fathers, especially the 1st and 2nd century, where they talk about the Antichrist, the beast, and the tribulation period. So this is a concept that's very well ingrained in church history about the tribulation which is going to happen in the future. Now, having said that, here are the theories. There are people that are called preterists. Now, a preterist is someone who says, no, there's not going to be a rapture. There's not going to be a coming of the Lord. Everything was fulfilled in Matthew 24 in the year 70 A.D. when the temple was destroyed and the Jewish people were scattered. Well, there's one way that you can absolutely, totally destroy the preterist doctrine. I have a lot of people that email me and write me about preterism, and they say, what do you think about it? Here's the key. If the book of Revelation was written later than 70 A.D., all the doctrine of preterism falls completely apart into the dust. And you can go to the early church fathers and you can go to scholarly works and they will identify to you that the book of Revelation was written in 95 A.D., 25 years after 70 A.D. You know, the one reason preterists believe the book of Revelation was written before 70 A.D. is in Revelation 11, John says, measure the temple of God and they that worship therein, but the court that's without leave out, for it's given to the Gentiles. They say, aha, the temple was destroyed in the year 70. Therefore, the book of Revelation had to be written before the year 70. No, that temple in Revelation 11 is a building that's going to be built during the tribulation period. Of course, they don't believe that. If they don't believe that, they got to come up with a theory of their own. But preterism is out the door, and we have a tape that we did on that at one of our camp meetings, about an 80-minute tape on they're lying about the rapture, the preterists. And you can contact us. We'll tell you how to get that if you'd like it. All right, the pre-tribulation belief says that somewhere prior to the actual beginning of the 7-year period, there's going to be an ingathering or a catching away. And that's what we're going to talk about on this tape today. The other group is mid-trib. They say that in the middle of the 7 years, there'll be some form of catching away. The other group is post-trib. They say at the end of the 7 years, there's going to be some form of a return of the Lord. And then there are just simply rapture fighters. And some of these people, I've dealt with them, Lord have mercy, they have the most hateful spirit. It's like they want everybody to die. They want everybody's head to roll. They want the Antichrist to shoot every Christian because they're not living right. I met some folks in my day. I'm telling you what, if I weren't saved, I would not get saved by listening to them or watching them because they're the saddest, most unhappiest people, some of them are. I'm talking now, not all, but some of those folks who are fighters, boy, they can have some mean spirits about them. And What we do is I'm not here on this tape forcing a belief on you, trying to convince you. I'm just going to give you information. I'm going to do what Fox News says. We report, you decide. And that's how we're going to leave. We're just going to give you enough information today for you to really think about and weigh in your spirit. And I believe if you weigh it properly, you're going to see what we're talking about, how this all comes together. Now, when you talk about the rapture, and I'm going to say this, and I believe this with all of my heart. When you talk about the rapture, when I talk about the rapture, so many times people do not understand the coming of the Lord from a Jewish Hebraic perspective. You know, months ago, we produced a tape. In fact, it's been some time back at one of our camp meetings where we reenacted the Jewish wedding. 14 phases of the Jewish wedding. And when you understand the 14 phases of an ancient Jewish wedding, it is an absolute 100% picture of the rapture of the church. And so I've often told people who don't understand the rapture are just trying to go through the Bible and say, let's see if I find a verse on the rapture. Let's see if I find this word. When what you have to do is understand that the New Testament was predominantly written by Jewish people. There are certain phrases and words and statements that are used in the New Testament that will not make sense until you understand the temple, until you understand Jewish things. Let me give you one quick example, if I may. Jesus in the book of Revelation warns people to watch and well as pray that they be not naked and others do not see their shame. Now, where does that come from? What does that have to do with anything? Well, in the ancient temple, back in the time of the high priest, when the priests wore these garments in the ancient temple, during the night watch, there was a man called the captain of the house who was a temple guard who would come around the wall to see if anybody was sleeping. If a guard was caught sleeping, they stripped him of his clothes and burnt his clothes right there with him standing naked. Now see, doesn't that make sense? Oh, that's why Jesus said that. Jesus said that because the people of his day understood that it meant you have to guard during the night watch. You have to be careful that the enemy doesn't get in. And see, anybody who would have known about the temple in Jesus' day, they would have not had to have a commentary like I just gave you on that verse. They would have known automatically what it meant. Having said that, some of the things that are found in the coming of the Lord are not going to be understood until we understand the following. Listen carefully. Number one, here's the three missing links to understanding the rapture. Link number one are the feast of Israel. The Bible says in Colossians 2 that the feast and Sabbaths are a shadow of things to come. Now, some of the feasts have already been fulfilled through Christ. He died at Passover. He was in the ground of unleavened bread. He was alive at first fruits. The church was born at Pentecost. But some of the feasts have not yet had a total prophetic fulfillment. So, what does it mean? They're a shadow of something that's going to happen in the future. And the rapture is one of those. It's a picture of the fall feast of Israel. Okay, number two, the feasts have a practical and a prophetic meaning. In other words, it's not just a shadow of what's coming, but in that feast you will have a prophetic meaning of something which is going to happen. Number three, you have to understand the law of harvest, the ingatherings and the first fruits, to understand the picture that God has already given us in the Old Testament of the coming of the Lord and what we call the rapture of the church. Okay, so in other words, it's all linked to the harvest. I have right here a whole bunch of grain. See, wheat. Over here on this other end, maybe some barley. But everything relating to the return of Christ is linked to harvest cycles and the harvest field. Even the parable of the wheat and tares in Mark chapter 4 is a picture of harvest. So what we're going to do, I want to give a statement to you, and I want you to listen to this statement very, very carefully. There is a law of harvest and the law of first fruits. Understanding these laws will help explain why there must be a rapture of the true church and when it will occur in relation to the end time harvest. I'm going to have